All right, let's get down to business. So before we start, no, I have not watched Welcome to Raccoon City because not only is it no longer for rent, but it's only to buy for $23. What made you think? What crack did you snort up your nostril that made you think that I would buy it for $23 when I wasn't willing to rent it for $20? What makes you think that? You strange. Anyway, the topic of this video is King of the Hill. The King of the Hill revival is now in the works as Mike Judge, the creator, I think, and he's the voice of Hank Hill. He is literally trying to revive this show. Now, I love King of the Hill. I never talked about King of the Hill on this channel. I mean, I did a little bit talking about Peggy because I'll get to Peggy when I get to Peggy. But I love King of the Hill. I'm going to explain why I love King of the Hill. I'm going to talk about character breakdown because there's too many episodes. There's like 13 seasons, too many episodes to go one by one and talk about that unless y'all want that. Please like, subscribe, share. I would love for you guys to watch me talk about King of the Hill. I would do an episode by episode thing if people would actually watch it. So if that's what you want, let me know in the comment section. Also, a reminder, always read the description. Reading is crucial. Reading is essential. So you may get a spoiler warning there if I don't say it. But this is going to be spoiler warning for King of the Hill. It's been a very long time. If you haven't watched it, I'm sorry. But you can watch it on Hulu. It is there. It is available. I don't know how many seasons there are on there, but I think there's 13 in total that were ever created. But before we get started, let me talk about the difference between a revival and a reboot and a remake. So with Resident Evil, y'all know that the remakes are basically recreating something that already exists, except they're not really remaking these Resident Evils. They're just cutting literally everything out that we liked. Literally, how many people are going to complain about the clock tower? I never played Resident Evil 3 by itself, but I do own Resident Evil 3 Remake, and I will be playing it on stream soon. So check out for that. I may also be playing Resident Evil 5 really soon. Again, watch out for that. But basically what a remake is supposed to be is remaking something and making it better. Like if you're going to make it worse, what's the point of remaking it? Reboot is when they recreate something for a new audience. A revival means that it is being revived. It is being set from where we left off, if not later down the line. So it's not for a new audience. It's not remaking something we just saw. Like we're not going to have to rehash anything. It is literally keeping up with what we've already done. Everything that has already has already occurred is now hindsight. We are on the same path. So with that being said, nothing should fundamentally change about the show. And if they're going to do this revival correct, they will heed that warning. But anyway, my mom and I were literally talking about 2 days ago before I saw this article today. I think this is the 18th or 19th today. I think it's the 19th. Literally, I was talking about making a script about King of the Hill. I was talking about they should not replace Luann's voice. Brittany Murphy was a very awesome woman. She was taken away from us too soon. It was horrible. If you want to look into the way she died, it's really sketchy and it's crazy. It's really strange. Anywho, I was going to make my own script about this. I was already going to pitch this to somebody. I don't know who I was going to pitch it to because I don't know who owns it and I don't know where it's at, where it be, because it be on Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, and it's also be on Fox. So I don't know who owns it, and I don't know who owns what, and I don't know who's partnered to who. I should probably look into that. But now he's going to do this. Mike Judge is talking about doing it. This is great. But before we get into my opinion about this and what should change, what should stay the same, let me give you a rundown of the show and a character breakdown, because it's been a very long time, since we've been actually talking about this, people who grew up with King of the Hill and whatnot. First, let's talk about the show itself. King of the Hill follows the life of a man, Hank Hill, his family, friends, and neighbors, while having commentary on religion, race, class, and culture. Before any right-winger, quarter of a men, loser erotic, doom trash, all of you who sit in the corner and talk about how women ruin everything and urinate in bottles and whatnot, so you don't have to get up from your gaming chair, need to understand this. King of the Hill has always been political. We have seen about 4 or 5 presidents on King of the Hill. It's always been political. Before you open your freaking disgusting mouths, it's always been about race. It's always been about class. It's always been about sexism. It's always been about it's always been about exposing big issues in our society. So you can sit back like Peter Griffin, like you always will, and be like, we live in a society. But to be honest, we really do. And no show on now or on in their heyday, prime time boy, not The Simpsons, not Bob's Burgers. I'm sorry, I like Bob's Burgers, but not Bob's Burgers, not Family Guy, and definitely not South Park can hold a candle to King of the Hill. Literally, as time went by, things got a lot less realistic. Let me tell you. Things got a lot less realistic. It started out very, very realistic. But let me get into it. So let's talk about the first character on our list. Hank Hill. Hank was the Boy Scout type, always following the rules and often being the stick in the mud, most of the time among the shenanigans of everyone else. But in reality, Hank was one of the worst characters on the show in terms of actions they took. For example, he uses, I think they're Methodist beliefs to literally project his issues out on people, and he prejudges people. And he often worries about his son Bobby being gay. That's like a big thing that's in the show for the most part. Honestly, like I said, it's political. This is very political. And he always gets his comeuppance for whatever he's done, whether it be sexism or him being homophobic. It was always to the detriment of his situation. He was never rewarded for being like that. And that's something that people have to understand when it comes to the race aspect, when it comes to, because there are a few questionable things, and I will talk about that. But honestly, for all his issues I have with Hank Hill's character, he did get karma back, like I said, as he has 2 of the worst quote unquote friends you could ever have. Literally, he doesn't need enemies. And his boss. Oh my goodness, there's so much. I'm not going to talk about Buck Strickland a lot, so I'm just going to talk about him here real quick, because I'm literally not going to talk about him after this. Maybe not. I don't know. Who knows? But he's literally his boss. He literally worships the ground he walks on because he's got a horrible father named Cotton. Hank does. And he projects his feelings for what a father he would have given his father had he been a good father to someone who hates him. Literally, Buck Strickland and Mr. Krabs go to the same, well, I don't want to say strip club, but Mr. Krabs is old enough to go to a strip club. But all I'm saying is they're rubbing elbows. They're talking about how can we screw over the customer. They literally don't care about customers. They literally don't care about their employees. And Hank is the one that goes to bat for him the most. And he literally put his child at risk. He literally put Bobby at risk. Literally. Giving him a watch and told him to not let anyone have it when he owes people money. Literally. Buck Strickland is one of the devil's spawns on earth. Literally. And Hank still has more respect for him than his own wife. So I'm just sitting here. He's got more respect for his dog than his own wife. And I'm fine with him doing stuff like that because everything always goes wrong for him in the long run. Things go very wrong for Hank. But literally, another thing about Bobby is that Bobby is everything that Hank doesn't want. If he were any more what he didn't want, Bobby would have been a girl. And I think that's really interesting. It's like literally every time Hank has an issue, there's 2 more issues that go back to him. It's like tenfold, literally. Karma, comeuppance, say what you will, but Hank always gets put back in his place. Speaking of Bobby, let's talk about him real quick. Bobby Hill is very manipulative and would often pit his parents against each other to get what he wanted. Bobby was very intelligent in early years of the show, but they made him more of an annoying, evil person rather than just being a child and trying to get what he wants. As time went on, literally, with that personality change made him girl crazy, and he got a lot more dumb and less clairvoyant in regards to actions and reactions. Even as a child, even younger, though, as the early parts of the show, Bobby would understand, okay, this happens, therefore this would happen. Not in the sense of what a child would think, but in the sense just of natural, okay, I know that fire's hot. But time went on, Bobby started to forget that fire was hot. I don't know if you understand what I mean about Bobby, and if you don't and you're confused, I really highly recommend you watch King of the Hill. Literally watch, I'm telling you, I promise you, you will not be disappointed and I will be correct. Watch one episode from the first season and then watch one episode from the last season. Bobby Hill is not the same, and no, people should not be the same, especially since people are having birthdays, and according to King of the Hill, time aged on. Like we see people age, but time does go on, and literally, honestly, so does the electronics. The electronics get more advanced as time goes on, and there's a few episodes dedicated to that as well, like the new year, the new millennium. But I'm telling you, go to episode 1, see him, and it's not for the better. It's one thing if you change for the better. Bobby changed like he reverted back to adolescence. And that's one thing that people don't like about King of the Hill, is that Bobby, his character went backwards. Like he should have started out how he ended. He should have started out how he ended, and he should have ended how he started out if we were going to play that game. It's just bad writing. Here's an example of how he became a stupid kid. Rather, like he was, I would consider him intelligent. I would say Bobby Hill was intelligent because he knew what to do to get what he wanted. But he turned that into being a bad human being. Literally, he is a terrible human being. He burnt down a church. Like, I'm telling you, like, I'm not going to give you any context to that. I'm going to just say he burnt down a church because you got to watch it. You got to watch it. But when Hank hired a junkie, Bobby Hill knew right away he was on drugs, but Hank Hill, a grown man, a grown adult, could not see it before hiring him. And there were literal signs. And that, like I said, there's irony in this show. There's a lot of irony, and the show is literally woven with irony within it. But when the irony, like, I'll explain literally the irony of him not knowing that man was on drugs was crazy. There's a lot of inconsistent things that make things not make sense. And like I said, I think it has to do with writing, because Hank will know certain things and be like, yeah, are you dumb? And then not know that someone's on drugs. And it's not about having agency or having any compassion for the human being. It's literally just being ignorant of certain things, like a child as a grown man. But his parents were real strange. I'm probably going to talk about Cotton a little bit later, but just a quick rundown of Cotton. He killed 50 men. Like, he literally got his shins blown off in the war, and he says he killed people in Vietnam. And that's his thing. That's his shtick. He's like a military retired guy. And there's a few shows and there's a few episodes dedicated to how people treat veterans and whatnot. And I think that's really interesting. I think they should have given a little more time to Cotton before he died. Spoiler, he dies within the show. He literally dies to spite his son. Literally, I'm telling you, watch the episode. If you don't believe me, literally, this is crazy. This show was so ahead of its time. I don't think there's any time in which it would have been great, like, to post it, but I feel like we need it now. We need King of the Hill now, and that's great. And another thing, sidebar. There should be a black girl. There should be a black girl, main character, black girl, heterosexual, main character, black girl, okay? Heterosexual, bisexual, but I would like some representation, please. I'm always represented by some heterosexual black men, or a lesbian black woman, or a really big thing is they love to make people heterosexual and very, very, very light-skinned, which also doesn't represent me. It also doesn't represent me. If you guys know what I look like, you know that me and Zendaya have almost nothing in common physically. I'm never there. I'm a dark-skinned girl that is heterosexual. That would be nice, because that's what I am. That would be nice. Every time there's a dark-skinned person or dark-skinned woman, they do like to say 2 for 1 and here they're bisexual or they're gay. That's what they do often, most of the times. I can think of 2 people right now, that girl from iCarly and The Legend of Korra. They made Korra fall under those categories. So she no longer represents me. Do you see what I'm saying? That's what I mean. So let's go back to Cotton. Cotton Hill is gross. He was abusive physically, mentally on Hank. That's why he has no love for any human except himself and his dog and his truck. He thinks of his inanimate objects as people because he puts his love into them because he can't put his love into people. His mom just literally just glazed over and literally let that happen. She didn't leave the house or anything. They got a divorce. I don't know when they got a divorce, but the deed was already done. Hank was already traumatized. There's a point where he can't shoot a gun because Cotton put so much fear into him that he could not hold the gun straight. Hank needs therapy, and I think it would be really cool to see Hank go to therapy at least one episode. One episode. He doesn't have to go to therapy the whole time because there's a lot of fixes that happen in some of the episodes that don't carry on into the next episode. Because, not, like I said, it's one thing, like the Simpsons are going on their 50th or 60th season, okay? I think it's interesting that certain shows get grace to be the same without changing a lot. But when we actually have characters that don't change a lot, people get offended. Like, oh, why aren't they changing? Why isn't this? If you're going to have something episodic, 9 times out of 10, if it's not going to be something that's just one season, you're going to have some grace and suspend your disbelief just a little bit so that we can continue on the show. If everyone's changing from episode to episode, it's kind of a different show. It's not like falls under the category of animation domination type situation. Like I said, a Family Guy or a The Simpsons. So yeah, but that's them. I'm not going to talk much about them. So literally, if I could describe Hank in one word, it would be naive. If I could describe Bobby in one word, it would be Bobby. He was a very different type of child that was true to himself despite his father's inability to love him unconditionally. But as time went on, his lack of love spilled over to Bobby's love life, and he begins to see girls as objects and treat them very badly. But his grandfather Cotton didn't help, as he got his grandson, who was trying to get his grandson a prostitute. He's like 12 or 13, like disgusting. I think he tried to do the same thing to his son as well. I can't remember, but there's an episode about that. Very edgy. And then another thing, let's talk about edgy, Quarter of a Men and all those people who are like, oh, I get to say the N-word and that's edgy. That's not edgy. That's just being inappropriate. It's just like being naked outside. That's just inappropriate. You don't do that. Where if you want to do that, if you want to say the N-word and be like an animal, you can go live in the woods. That would be wonderful because then we can both be happy. I can be in a society where people are normal and you can go in the woods and get eaten by a lion. Honestly, go away, bye. Mars for all I care. But King of the Hill was very edgy, and edgy in a way where it's not offensive for the most part. But you know what? I'm not one of those black people who just says, well, I wasn't offended. If you found King of the Hill offensive, being Laotian, being black, being any Asian ethnicity, being anyone who is a minority, please tell me in the comments and we can have a discussion about that. I would love to hear your opinions about King of the Hill. It made fun of every person, for those people who are like, oh, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, but both sides will be offended if the other side talks about them. Like I said, Quarter of a Man, Loser, he always be talking about, oh, I can't believe you guys are talking about tweets, old tweets and whatnot, and he's doing his very best to make sure everybody knows about tweets about people he doesn't like. Literally hypocrisy in human form, I don't even know, in burger form, straight up, you look like a human burger. But anyway, if you want edgy, King of the Hill is the edgiest. Like I said, I would consider King of the Hill to be better than The Simpsons very more consistently, even though despite the fact that King of the Hill is very inconsistent when it gets to the final third of the series. The final third of the series is very inconsistent with what happened before it. And if you watch it, you'll know what I mean. Speaking of inconsistencies, let's talk about the most inconsistent character because she's a woman and no one knows how to write women. And if you don't know how to write women, I suggest you stand down and pay someone to do it for you. Peggy Hill, oh yeah, was my favorite character, and she started out as one of the most intelligent of the cast, like one of the only people who's educated, as well as almost every white character on the cast were rednecks, right? Okay, so there are certain things that go into being a quote-unquote redneck that they put and portrayed into this show. Like, here's an example. When both Hank and Peggy said eco-friendly, they said eco-friendly. And I don't know if that's a regional thing because I don't live in Texas. They live in Arlen, Texas. I don't know where they're at specifically in Texas, but I know there's different dialects and stuff, and that can be something that's attributed to their speech. So, Peggy was someone who was a redneck. She was from that Hillcrest country, and eventually they told us that she was from a ranch, which is not consistent with how we saw her in her past, like when she was remembering her life. And one could argue that everybody's past, when they go back to their past, is very jaded and very altered based on their experience, because it's funny that this is brought up because there's an episode, one of my favorite episodes, I will go down in history and say this is my favorite episode, is when they become firemen and they are volunteer firemen. And when they burn down the firehouse, all four characters, Hank, Bill, Boomhauer, and Dale, all recount the minutes before the fire started. And each account is way different. And it's hilarious to see each character's perspective. It's really interesting. But I liked it. But with Peggy, a big flaw that I didn't care about, was that she was overconfident because she wasn't made a fool of as much as she was in later years of the show. The show, turned into how stupid can Peggy look today show. Literally, that's what the show was about. It was about how stupid can we make Peggy look? How can we humble Peggy? I don't think people liked that Peggy had the goods to go with it. She just wasn't the blonde beauty that everyone thinks Nancy is. When Nancy looks, just to say, I'm just saying, Peggy just doesn't look they take no, it's just like the B. Arthur situation. Everyone called her ugly. Everyone called her mannish because she wasn't the standard of beauty. She had black hair in her heyday. She was very taller than everyone else. And on Golden Girls, everything about her was torn down. Even though it's supposed to be just a character, it was the character that they created. And with Rose being Betty White, rest in peace, she was not stupid. Betty White was very intelligent enough to have her own spot on TV, her own network, her own situation. She was executive producer to stuff. She was working until her dying day, literally. And Rue McClanahan, Blanche Devereaux, was a slut on the show, but she was very quiet and reserved in real life. B. Arthur was the only one who actually had an issue with playing her character and being treated in a way, because it was basically her character, her own person, being ridiculed. And going back to Peggy Hill, a lot of people had a problem with Peggy Hill being someone who was a boggle champion. There was a lot of things she was proud of, and I don't understand why, if Hank can be so proud of his grass and be so proud of how well he pays bills, why can't Peggy be proud of being a boggle champion and being a substitute teacher? Every episode after the first third of their series was dedicated to humbling Peggy Hill. And I'm like, why? A fan theory about her change is that she suffered brain damage after surviving a skydiving incident where her parachute didn't open. Literally. And that whole situation was Hank's fault. All of it was Hank's fault. And then he never told, like, he wasn't going to tell her that it was his fault because she forgot her memory was gone after that. Like, Hank is one of the worst characters on the show. If you have one thing about Peggy that you have an issue with, I've got 3 things that is for each character. Let's say something. Let's say something. Fight me in the comments about Peggy Hill. I will go to bat for Peggy Hill. I will go on the hill and become the hill against Peggy Hill, honestly. The fact that Peggy was a woman and intelligent and some people didn't listen to her was a big aspect of King of the Hill. It wasn't making fun of her being a woman. They were making fun of men for being stupid and not listening to a woman just because she was a woman. You dig? If you were to ask a lot of men who watch the show, who's the worst character on the show? And you can look this up. Literally, go to YouTube. Well, watch it. Watch while I'm on here. Go on your phone. Click on YouTube. Go and type in worst character King of the Hill. It will always be Peggy. Every single time is Peggy. When that's really very dumb. And I don't understand. I understand completely why people are saying that, because they're sexist and misogynist. Because there are literally 4 people who are worse than her that have done worse on the show. And one can, if you're going to play these games and be like, oh, Bobby's a kid, blah, blah, blah. They wrote this kid. This is a child that they created. This is literally drawing. So don't tell me that this kid is just a kid because they wrote him this way. He could be different. Everyone can be different. They wrote Peggy horribly. They wrote a lot of people horribly, but you know what? Dale has actually done the worst out of everybody and has more resources than Peggy Hill to do worse things. He's got a bunch of disgusting rats and rodents in his house in cages that he can just send off to go kill someone. Like, don't come at me and say that Peggy Hill's the worst when Dale is sitting right here, when Bill is right here, literally Lenore's right here, Nancy's right here. Nancy's right here, and I'm always on women's side, but Nancy's someone I cannot get behind, and I'll talk about her later, but I can't. I'm sorry, I can't, Nancy. You trash. Literally, because of how terribly they wrote Peggy in the latter half of the show's runtime, they would say Peggy because they made her stupid and overconfident without having anything to back it up. She would be overconfident and be made a fool of. A literal fool. Jester. She wasn't just acting like she knew Spanish fluently, which is still, to this day, a hilarious inside joke. But she thought she was more capable than she actually was, which made her look very stupid and be very annoying to men who already don't want women to exist in the first place. Before, she had goods to back up her confidence, like when Luann's drunk mother tried to stab Luann's boyfriend with a fork. She literally threw herself in between the fork and him. She has so many more good deeds that go unnoticed when they just talk about, well, she kidnapped a child because she thought she could speak Spanish, but she didn't. Like, that was an issue. That was over. How many times were people put in danger because of Dale and Bill? How many times could people have literally just listened to Peggy and everything would have been fine, but they listened to Hank and things went wrong? Don't come at me with all this stuff. We can play that game just like I'm going to talk about this when I talk about Welcome to Raccoon City when I am able to watch it. You can either say that Claire Redfield is just as important as Leon, or you can be realistic and live in reality and say that Claire is more significant than Leon. There is no Leon is more significant than Claire. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. I've actually have a video about how Leon S. Kennedy is a glamorized side character, side piece, biscuit. Okay? You cannot say that Peggy Hill is the worst character on the show without looking at everybody else. Maybe if you don't look at nobody else and Peggy's the only one there, maybe in the lineup. But if you put Dale up there and Bill and Hank, you start to notice that those people are not angels. Far from angels. They're not even demons. They're running the show. They're running HE double hockey stick down there. I'm telling you, there's an episode. Like, you literally, I can tell you, I've watched every single King of the Hill. If you ask me any question, I'll answer it and I'll get it right because I've seen every King of the Hill episode, I've never missed one. But literally, don't come up here and play games and say that Peggy is bad. She's either just as bad as everyone else or everyone else is worse than her. There is no making Peggy Hill the worst character on the show. There's none. There's none. You can play games and you can say it and I'll just laugh in your face because it's not true. You just have problems with your mother and you need to go settle that with her before you start talking to women. How about that? They make Peggy so unlikable. It's almost like it was deliberate, like someone had a vendetta against her in the writing room. If I could change anything in this revival, I would ask kindly to give back the old Peggy. You know what? Give us back the old Peggy. Give us back the old Peggy who knew what she was talking about and wasn't listened to and able to say, I told you so. Not the Peggy that is always told, I told you so, from the loserest of scrum, Dale. Literally, Dale is outshining her in later seasons. She must have had brain damage because she's less intelligent than Dale. Dale, are you serious? They make, like I said, I think Dale is like the second, if not the worst character on the show. He was literally right 1/4 of the time. He would say some crazy thing and they would take it to be true and it wouldn't be true. He would say something weird and strange. He's like, he would be a QAnon. He would be a QAnoner. Like he would be, I think he would be. Conspiracies is his game. And he would only be right sometimes because he knew so much. He saw little things that no one noticed. That, like the Jimmy Witchard thing where he's like, oh, you know, Jimmy Witchard, he's at the thing, he's at the club. It was stuff that anyone could have figured out if they knew that thing. If they were there, they would have known that Jimmy Witchard was not there all the way. But honestly, nowadays, if you watch shows that are later in the series, Peggy is where Dale was and Dale is where Peggy was. Literally, they switch their places. Dale is more often right than Peggy, which makes zero sense unless she did get brain damage. The next character I'm going to talk about is Dale Gribble. Literally, like I said, he's one of the worst characters on the show, and I could make a literal thesis statement. I could make a literal thesis statement on Dale Gribble being the worst character in animation history. He is a terrible father. Don't at me. Just because he gave his son $2 in that one episode, you guys know the episode if you watched it, does not make Dale Gribble a good father. Y'all got low trash standards for men to be good fathers. And women can't mess up once or else they're a horrible mother. So go deal with that. Go deal with your parents and leave that out of my life. Leave that out of this world, honestly. He is a horrible, terrible father. He is a horrible husband. Also, don't at me. And he is the worst friend to Hank. The worst. Bill's second worst. He's the first worst character and friend to Hank Hill. Just to list a few things Dale has done over the years. He got mad at Hank for not letting him use disgusting chemicals on his grass. So he literally decimated his yard with fire ants. And like I said, he cares more about his yard than his own family. If his family died in a fire, he would be like, is the grass okay? Honestly, I'm telling you. I'm telling you right now. That's how Hank is. And he is one of the worst characters on the show. You can play games and pretend like he's a good angel, but he's not. I don't care if he risked his life to save Bobby in that episode from the ants. Later in the episode, like I said, you know why? Because when you fix your own mess that you've created, you're back at zero at best. He should be in the negative, but he's back at zero at best. Dale kidnaps Hank and Bobby in the woods to drain their blood because he thought he had rabies. Dale snitched on Hank when there was a drought and they couldn't use a lot of water. Dale consistently agitates everyone around him when something serious is going on. Need I go on? Need I go on? He ate mushrooms. Nancy's doing her thing over there and Dale's doing his thing. Who's taking care of your son? I know it's not his real father because his real father was turned into a garbage trash can. Literally a garbage can. But we'll talk about John Redcorn later. Oh my gosh. Dale is worse than Peggy before and after the show changed. But the latter half is filled with Dale being ironically right because this show is built on irony. But Dale being right all the time was irritating and irrational and was only written that way to make Peggy look worse. I'm telling you, I promise you. Someone in the writing room hated Peggy Hill. They either hated the voice actress, who is, drumroll please, the bigger witch in Hocus Pocus. I don't remember her name. I only know Winifred or whatever. I don't even know the middle name. I know Sarah. I think her name's Sarah. I don't remember her name. I think it's because her name's Sarah Jessica Parker, but not Sarah Jessica Parker and not Bette Midler. Okay, it's the other girl. She's Peggy Hill's voice, and that was really cool to learn when I first heard it. But let's talk about another character that was written down the drain because she's a woman, and you guys can't write women. Let me tell you. Let me say this really slow. You can't write women. When everyone hates the woman and there are many bad men on your show, that means you wrote the men better than the women. Why is it that when people go into Naruto and come out of Naruto, they hate all the women? Because you don't know how to write them. It's not because women are horrible. It's because you wrote them terribly. And if you can't do it, then find a woman who can, or find a guy who can. But I would prefer a woman, because why don't you give a woman a job? Why are you such trash? Why are you such garbage? Anyway, Luann Platter is the niece of Hank and Peggy Hill. She started out her life in a trailer with her drunk parents. A fight ensued and the trailer tipped over. Leanne, her mom, went to prison, and old boy, her dad, aka Peggy's brother, is either arrested or on the run, but they always say that he's on an oil rig because they treat this girl like a child, and that's another thing. They infantize her, and I hated the infantization of Luann Platter because honestly, she was more an adult the younger she was. Like I said, they did the same thing with Bobby. Bobby was way more mature for his age, younger than older. Both of them turned very infantile. They turned very juvenile. Both of them. So Luann goes to live with the Hills until she eventually gets a house next to them. But before that, there's a few episodes dedicated to her, showing her development. But unfortunately, all that development and importance dissolves with her brain cells when they decided they needed yet another block of wood on the show to outshine Bill and Dale's stupidity. Pre-change, Luann was dumb, but not stupid. She would notice small things, and she was just uneducated. But her best attribute was that she could fix cars really well, and doing it a few times on the show. While the men around her would be like, "Thanks, Hank." Literally being, it's the irony. This is not inappropriate, nor is it something that I found to be offensive as a woman, because this was the irony of the show. They thanked Hank for fixing the car when they clearly saw Luann do it. And Peggy even has to remind them that, hey, Luann did that. Hank's like, well, yeah, I tried. I did my best. Like, no, it's not cute, sir. Literally, Luann never got mad at that. I think she got mad once, but she literally dissolved her brain cells. Like I said, she's not anything anymore. And she did follow the leader. She did do a lot of things that made it, but she was a young girl. I would attribute that to her being very young. But later on in the season, she turns into an infant. She has her own baby and she's an infant. She said she wants to name her baby Lasagna. In context of the show, I'll explain why that makes me upset. But honestly, later in the series, she can barely do anything. And her mechanic talent is literally thrown out the window in favor of Lucky's existence. Lucky, in short, is her redneck husband that thought he could live off a settlement he got from Costco for slipping on urine in the men's bathroom. One big thing a lot of men like to attribute to the reason why they hate Peggy Hill is this one thing in particular that involves Lucky. Here's a short sidebar, okay? So Lucky is trash and had no history of having any sort of drive for success in his life, thus had no attributes that would make him a good husband. But every woman's supposed to look at the content of a man's character and not his wallet, not anything, not his face, not his broken teeth, not anything. Just as long as he says good morning to you. Like, okay, whatever. Whatever, dude. Get with a schnozzle-toothed woman. Get with a big girl. But you won't, will you? Gouge your freaking eyes out so you're blind. How about that? Anyway, Hank hates and always hated Luann. And I think he was jealous that she could fix cars better than him. She was annoying. She did a few things that were annoying. But he hated her for that. I know it. But he wanted her to marry Lucky because it would get her out of his life for the most part. Peggy, on the other hand, hated Lucky because he wasn't good enough for her. Now, men can talk about how ugly a woman is, or how they're a gold digger. She take my money when I'm in need. But when a literal thesis is written up about why a woman should not be with a man despite appearance, she's wrong, like honestly. So the way she went about getting them to not be together was awful, all right? But too many men put their stock into that one thing and one reason only as to why Peggy is the most evil character on the show. Literally, look it up on YouTube. There's a video of some guy that's got a lot of views, that a lot of likes, and everyone's drowning on Peggy Hill in the comments. Like, that's their literal mother. Like, honestly, go to therapy. Honestly, this isn't a therapy session for you. Go to therapy. I think it's interesting that the most evil character isn't Dale or Bill, which, you know what? Let's talk about Bill, okay? I'm done talking about Peggy for now. I'm done. So, William Fonte de la Torre d'Autrive is one of Hank's childhood friends, like Dale and Boomhauer. Now, he's a loser, good-for-nothing creep that lives alone and creeps on Peggy Hill. Creeps. But before, he was the strong, popular guy in high school until he got divorced from his wife, Lenore, which he attributes to everything else that went wrong in his life, you know. Blaming women instead of blaming yourself. He becomes fat, bald, and worthless, only having the military to cradle him. And he's literally an army sergeant barber. He's not going to war or anything, so. His storylines range from heartwarming to pure disgusting and vile, very consistently over the series run. Bill is more harmful to everyone else when he has attention, also being one of Hank's enemies when he sees the opportunity to be conniving. He's super annoying, and I would and will argue he's more annoying than Peggy. Literally. All those Peggy haters, get in the comments and we can dance. Let's go. Oh yeah. But yeah, Bill sucks, and his antics were funny and sad. Just funny and sad at the same time. The next character we will be talking about is Boomhauer. Really quick before we get into Dale's family. So Boomhauer is a guy that talks really funny. It's not a joke. It's literally serious that people sound like Boomhauer in the South. Me being from the South, some of my family members sound like that. Distant family members, cousins, okay? But some people in the South sound just like Boomhauer. It's not a joke. It's literally like, it's funny because it's true, but it's like people thought that it was just a joke that they created and that was something genius. It was literally just them taking from reality. That's what people sound like down here sometimes. But Boomhauer is consistently a ladies' man, womanizer, who's always cycling women in and out of his life until it happens to him literally once and he falls to pieces. This show showed the hypocrisy of people and exposed their flaws before their actions, which is why, for the most part, I wasn't offended by the content of the show. What I got upset at was the writing being trash for most of the women, all of the women. There's not a single woman I could say was written well. I can tell you. It just gets worse as the show progresses. But back then, I'm sure only one woman was allowed to be in the writing room when she was rushing coffee and sharpened pencils to the writers. Nothing much about Boomhauer to talk about. Out of all the childhood friends of Hank, he's the one we get the least information about. His episodes are very, gem worthy. They're really good. They're well written when it's his story. Within other people's stories, you might notice some nuggets of his life in the background. Literally so much, in fact, that the last episode finally told us his occupation after 13 seasons. A pan to a desk told us he was a Texas Ranger or something. I thought that was hilarious. The show's humor teetered between irony and dark comedy that a lot of right-wingers and conservatives on YouTube get wrong about edgy humor. Between King of the Hill, Family Guy, or South Park, which hinders on someone's ability to get offended, and the joke lies within laughing at your own audience. King of the Hill is in its own league as it treats their audience like the adults they are, and they don't have to explain a joke nor beat it over your head for too long. A lot of jokes in King of the Hill went over my head as a child, but I can actually appreciate them watching as an adult. There's nothing to appreciate when watching Family Guy or South Park. The joke is, isn't this offensive to someone? Aren't you offended? You shouldn't be offended. This is just stuff. While King of the Hill is like, hey, that's very relatable. Gee, that's ironic. If only the characters knew. And sometimes ironic pieces can be far too annoying to see in every episode. But King of the Hill did it in a way where mostly you were all right to watch another episode. Now, let's get on with the Gribbles, okay? Before we talk about the family that might be offensive to audiences today, let's talk about the Gribbles, which is kind of like half offensive. So, the Gribble family consists of Dale, Nancy Hicks Gribble, and Nancy's son, Joseph. The reason why I'm calling Joseph Nancy's son is because there's a run-on joke that Nancy is cheating on Dale with a Native American spiritual healer, John Redcorn. The name you already know what they were trying to do. I don't know if there's a real John Redcorn, or if there's a Redcorn family or tribe, but I don't think there is, and I don't think they cared. Literally, I think they just picked two words and put them together and then said that this was this man. His name is John. So it's not like they even took from a Native American name, Achiwa, Hakata, Payette. They didn't care. They did not care about Native American names. They just said John Redcorn. Which his character was butchered for the worst. He was one of the worst butchered characters. Like on Peggy, between Peggy and John Redcorn, they are tied for the worst written later half of the series. Literally, there's no excuse for how John Redcorn was turned into a weenie. But back to Nancy real quick. So Nancy is a weather woman on local TV. She's a bad mother. Literally, she's a bad mother. Terrible friend to Peggy. And horrible wife to Dale, and I never support cheating. If she wanted to be with John Redcorn, she should have gotten a divorce. But the reason why Dale has never caught on to, there's a few explanations given throughout the show as to how Dale just is in the dark about his very dark-skinned, very looking like John Redcorn's son. One explanation is aliens. Literally aliens. Dale was out of town when Joseph was conceived. He did the math and realized that. And then thought the next logical thing was, oh my goodness, the aliens gave his sperm to my wife. Losers, quarter of a man, doom penis. Literally all those people over there in the right corner of YouTube would all attribute this to him being naive and cutesy wootsy. There's one thing with Hank's naivete that makes it almost comical. But him knowing everything else that he knows makes it manageable to understand, suspend their disbelief that this man doesn't know what someone on drugs looks like. But with Dale's naivete, it's very much so almost unbelievable. It's almost unbelievable. But one might say that, you're an adult. I'm sorry, you're an adult. There comes to be a time when you're 88, are you still going to be talking about how you're still learning something and how you don't know what racism is? Like, how long are you going to keep going? How long are you going to keep going and be ignorant? How long do we have before we have a cutting off point to where we say to adults, you can no longer plead naivete. You can no longer plead ignorance. When is that cutoff mark? Because I think Dale has already passed that. But aside from the aliens thing, the next thing that Dale claims, I don't know if it was him or Peggy who said that he said this, but I think she said that he was part Jamaican or something. And that's why their son is dark-skinned, but on his grandmother's side or something. But Joseph is very much so John Redcorn's son. If you look at them, they literally do this thing where they pan back and forth. And that's his son. I think it's sad that no one told Dale. I think it's disgusting that Dale doesn't know himself. Peggy, in fact, not any of Dale's friends, not Hank Hill, the straight arrow, a good guy, best guy on the show, right? Not Bill, the lovable, snubbable, he just stink a little and ugly. Not Boomhauer, the womanizer, is telling Dale Gribble that his wife has been cheating on him. Nobody except Peggy Hill wanted to tell him out of the kindness of her heart. Another thing that I want is I hope the first episode opens up with Joseph learning that he is John Redcorn's son and him punching John Redcorn out. That was going to be my shtick when I was going to make the script. I was going to have it start out with Joseph finding out, and the whole episode would be about him coming to that realization and asking questions, like going to every person that he talked to as a kid, coming back to Arlen, because I think I was hoping that he would leave and come back and learn then. And maybe Nancy is divorced from Dale finally, at last, hopefully. Maybe John Redcorn doesn't want to have anything to do with Nancy. Ironic twist, maybe. Dale still living in that house. I just feel like that would be really cool to see. But I feel like this whole Joseph not knowing, even Bobby knew that Dale's father was not Joseph's father, because in one episode prior, like before the seasons got crazy, Bobby referred to Dale as Mr. Gribble instead of his dad. He was like, my dad. And he's like, oh, you mean Mr. Gribble? And he's like, yeah, my dad. Like, that told us right there that Bobby was not stupid. He was not stupid. He was very much so intelligent. The fact that Peggy was one of the last people to know, like, that whole situation, not only shows the irony of the show yet again being genius, it shows Peggy's trusting nature that isn't naivete, but more literal trust in humankind, because she wasn't naive for everything until later down the line, like I said. I will always go to bat for Peggy Hill, literally. But anyways, that's the Gribbles rundown. Next, let's get into the supernusapons. So let's just get this out of the way, okay? Well, there were a lot of questionable decisions made about where they took the supernusapons. So the first episode they even appeared in was literally about Hank thinking they ate his dog because they're Asian. How they did that episode was very, very precise and very teetering, and no one else could have done a better job. With that being said, a lot of the decisions made after that episode were, at best, not good. Not good at all. So, not going to talk about those issues that much right here, except the fact that Khan should have been played by an Asian voice actor. Min and Connie, I think, are voiced by the same woman. I think they're both played by an Asian actress. It's really not that difficult. Just find an Asian actor, find someone that's Asian to play Khan Supernusapon. How hard is it? You've so many Anglo-Saxons in the Caucasus Mountains working in your executive producer chair, working as designers, working as freaking sketch artists, working as freaking everything. The least you can do is have Asian people in Asian roles. How hard is it? So Khan is very annoying, but every character is annoying, but how they annoy you differs based on who you're talking to. So the reason why I'm annoyed by Khan is because he's like very kiss butt, and he like sucks on the literal nutsack of people who are above him. He aspires to be like them. He's very spiteful. He's very conniving. And he even makes deals with Bobby, like, to see his daughter. Like, and the whole thing, like I said, Bobby turned into a little horrible monster. He treated Connie like garbage, and they broke up. They were together. He was jumping through his window and whatnot. She was risking being grounded to see him, and he's going to treat her like crap. What trash, what utter gutter garbage that Hank created. You should have left that in your narrow urethra, freaking garbage. But anyway, Min is also supposedly, quote unquote, Peggy's friend, but she's mean to everyone. She's mean specifically to Peggy a lot, but she's mean to literally everyone. She's horrible to everyone. She starts out the show being horrible to everyone. Like I said, there's not a good woman. There's not a woman that anyone could say is great. But like I said, there's not a good man either. But like I said before, men would sooner want to be like Hank than want to be like Peggy. And I would rather want to be like Peggy than be like Hank. That's the difference. Women would probably still want to be like Hank because patriarchy, because misogyny. When, like I said, I've given ample amount of examples. If you don't believe me, watch the entire series and then come back to me and tell me that Peggy is the worst character. Hank is literally in the running to be America's next top worst character, literally. I don't know what else to say about that. I'm not gonna I'll argue with you, but I'm not gonna argue for very long. But literally, Min's horrible, like I said. Connie, the only reason why her name is Connie is because Khan wanted a son. He calls her Khan Jr. One thing that I don't know if they're going to do that may very well be very interesting is to see if Connie becomes transgender, because she's like, you know what? I feel like I am. Maybe there was something. Connie's my second favorite character overall. A lot of the jokes that come from Connie are kind of like those poking jokes that are like, sometimes I think they go a little bit too far with Connie, especially because she's a kid, and a lot more grace is given to Bobby when he makes a mistake than to Connie, just from everybody's perspective. I think there's a lot of fates talked about in this series when they talk about Con, the Asian side, the Asian aspect that they bring with the Supernusempawns. But I don't know if it was to make fun of them or legitimately to bring spirituality. But when there's one episode in particular that makes Con into something different than he usually is seen. When there's a fire and Buckley dies. Buckley is Luann's ex-boyfriend because they broke up before he died. But literally, when he dies, Con acts like Buckley's like an angel or like someone that was worth anything. And yeah, someone died, okay? But everyone was sad. But Con seemed to be the saddest, even though he never knew Buckley. And he even says he didn't know Buckley. It's just, I don't know if they were just trying to make him out to be crazy or what. But another thing, speaking of quote unquote crazy, they made him manic depressive. I don't understand what that is in particular because I'm not a doctor. But I do know that they amped it up to be on the show very, very crazy, very insane. And it's not something that is good to keep promoting negative connotation to mental health. But we have a long way to go as a society to figure that out. But I'm just going to say that they could probably do a lot better job at explaining his manic depressive nature. Even though I don't know anything about that, you could probably do some more research about that before trying to put that in the show again. Because I feel like the first time they talked about it was very inappropriate. But like I said, in a show, you have to exaggerate a few things. I understand that. They talk about racism. Like literally, there's a character Budasak, and there's Bernie Mac was on this show too. A lot of people were on the show, but aside from that, I think that Con, the Supernusempawns weren't enough to say that the show had every aspect to show. Like, I love the fact that there were dark-skinned Asian people. That was cool. But I think they were doing two birds, one stone. Two birds, one stone in relation to TV shows and whatnot. They love to, like I said, Legend of Korra. They put a dark-skinned woman and they made her gay. They do those things. They put two together so they don't have to worry about anything else. And that's annoying in itself because, like I said, someone doesn't get representation. Someone, like, if you're going to put someone straight, put someone gay, put someone with a different color, put someone from another country. Don't put someone from Zimbabwe who is transgender in nothing but white people. That's not what we're asking. Maybe you can have someone who's gay or transgender from another country, but also have someone else who represents someone who is from here, who is straight, someone who is from here who is not white, someone who is from here who is darker skinned than the not white character. Like, that's what diversity means. Diversity does not mean you put one character that has all the marks checked out of everything that you need to be diverse and call it a day. And I think that's what y'all need to realize. That's basically where we're gonna be at right now. Like, that's basically everybody you need to know. And if you want to know more about the show, all the other side characters, there's a lot of issues that happen. Like I said, Buck, there's a lot of storylines that happen with Buck that really show how much he hates Hank, and he just doesn't care because Hank thinks hate is love and love is hate. And that's why when his wife treats him with type of respect, he treats her like trash. The whole thing is just crazy. But all in all, the King of the Hill series, King of the Hill show was really good. It was great for its time. It would be great now. But like I said, the things that need to be changed, things that need to stay the same. So for starters, Brittany Murphy passed away. Like I said, Brittany Murphy was on 8 Mile. She was that girlfriend of B Rabbit, aka Eminem. They had sex in the literal freaking place of business that he worked at. And she also was on, I forgot what that show was called, or that movie. It wasn't Clueless. It was something else. It was like, maybe it was Clueless, but look up Brittany Murphy. She has a very heavy workload for the time she was alive. That's crazy. She's also in this movie called Girl Interrupted. It's got Winona Ryder as the main character and Angelina Jolie. Even though Brittany Murphy is in it a lot less than those two women, it's kind of like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, except a lot better. And she played Luann. Luann got married, had a baby. She should still be in the show. Do not kill off Luann just because her voice actress has passed away. I will always say this until the end of time. Without Dumbledore, y'all made more movies. Don't get me started on T'Challa either. T'Challa passed away. You had no problem with changing that dude from Empire to Dion Cheadle or whatever his name is, Cheon Deedon, what that boy's name is from Iron Man. Y'all had no problem changing men. Y'all have no problem giving men money. What you don't like is when women get money at all. Get any form of recognition. So when one passes away, y'all are so ecstatic because you love to just kick them off the show entirely and not have them there. I.e. Miss Krabappel, like y'all love to do that. Y'all just love to do that and be like, oh, in love and memory. They were not the character. They were playing a character that was their job. They also had a life aside from that character. Brittany Murphy is not Luann Platter. Luann Platter is Brittany Murphy. So I think Luann Platter could also be somebody the freak else. And if you're looking for someone, hey, it's Luann, I really want to be on the show. Okay, like, so anybody can be. It doesn't have to be me. Okay? It can be somebody else. But I'm just letting you know I'm on the table for being Luann Platter, and I intend to be in the writing room as well because I'm not going to play no trash character. Another thing, Bobby Hill's intelligence. You need to crank that up a little bit. He's a little older, and he stop making people go backwards. Same thing with Luann. I think you need to make someone who is Asian needs to be voicing Khan. Khan at the moment is voiced by a white dude who's basically every other side character you can hear his voice is the same. I think he's the same voice as Cotton too. He was in that show Carnival. He was like the father of the girl who died and her soul had to stay in the carnival place. But Carnival is also a very strange show, but I may do a video on that one. That was cool. But honestly, there's not much I have to say. Like, it just literally start off, if you're not going to start off exactly where it stopped, which I remember the very last episode. The last episode was when Hank and Bobby were doing that thing where they had to look at meat and guess what the round was or what the rump was and stuff like that. They were doing a meat thing and meat challenge, and that's when we learned that Boomhauer was a Texas Ranger and everybody was all happy, and Nancy decided to be with Dale. I think this revival should start years later. That would be a very good thing to do. Instead of starting off from the exact moment we stopped, I think you should start the same way that the first episode started. Hank fixing his car, working on it. I do believe that's what he was doing the first episode, if I'm not mistaken. And they're older. They're way older. Dale's divorced. That would be cool. Bobby is out to college. Nancy's son is out to college. And he comes back, and that's when he learns, I don't know from who, but he learns that John Redcorn's his father, and he punches John Redcorn out, and that's when it'll be like boom, 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 and then it'll be like ding, 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 and then it'll go, and then the time will go by, and like the first, I don't know if anyone who's seen the show knows how the show starts, and it like does a fast forward of them living. It should be like that, but years go by and like snow and whatnot. Like, that would be cool. And then it would show what it is now. And then from then on, we could have the show go the same way, except they're older. I don't know. I feel like there should be someone who's transgender. There should be a lot of now time stuff, because there was then time stuff in the show. Now time stuff that is something that is acceptable now. I think Hank should have to deal with that. Having Hank deal with the reality that things have changed would be very good. It would be a very good, refreshing thing to see someone navigate. It's kind of like Cobra Kai and how everything is different, and the way that Lawrence talks is very old school, and how he treats people and how he's misogynistic. It's funny and it's not offensive to me. I just find it offensive when people say that Lawrence was the one that was bullied when he wasn't. LaRusso was bullied. And I'm not going to get off that hill. You can push me, I'm not going to get off that hill. Lawrence is still the bad guy. I just find it funny that he's still stuck in the 80s. I think Hank being stuck in the 90s would be really funny to see. And basically with that, I'm done. There's nothing else really to say. I want you guys to watch King of the Hill. There's a lot of things that I said. There's a lot of spoilers that I talked about, but it's really won't do you justice unless you watch it. It's really interesting. There's, like I said, there's a lot of questionable things. Like literally anytime they have Khan on the screen, any Supernusum poem, they do questionable things. It seems like they have no idea how to write people who are not white males. They do questionable things with all the women. There's not a single woman or girl that has been created or came out of this show that was someone that anyone would want to relate to. If someone calls you someone from this show that's a woman, that is a literal insult to your character and your soul. There is not a single character on this show that is without faults, but it seems like the men get more grace. Even Bill Fallen Della Tordo Treve gets more grace than Peggy Hill, and that's disgusting. And I will always say that Peggy Hill is one of the best characters on the show. Y'all just wrote her terribly. Get out of my face. Don't be mad that Peggy ain't your mom. Don't be mad that Peggy ain't your girlfriend. Just because she can't cook something, she can literally play softball better than you. So what? What, boy? Anyway, I'm done. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like, subscribe, check out my Twitch. I'm going to be doing Resident Evil. I don't know which one I'm going to do. I don't know when I'm going to do it, but it's going to get done. Maybe it'll get done before I put this video out. Who knows? But I really do hope that this King of the Hill revival is cared for with the best of hands. It would be really disappointing to see King of the Hill turn to something that people will be, oh, it's woke, it's woke, it's woke. I have news flash for you. King of the Hill has always been what you would consider woke. It's always been like that. It's always been about race. It's always been about class. It's always been about misogyny. It's always been about sexism. It's always been about exposing these flaws and putting them in your face. And with that, I am done.